Okay, so subtracting is the inverse operation of addition. So subtracting 0 from a number results in the same number. So for example, if I take a minus 0, I'm going to get a. The same thing works with numbers, so like 7 minus 0 is going to be equal to 7. When it comes to subtracting, you just want to go in the order that you see it, follow your order of operations in that sense. So for this problem, we're going to do 8 minus 3 first, which would be 5, and then minus 1, so our answer is going to be 4. For bigger numbers, I would start first by stacking, and then start subtracting in those columns like you would have done in adding. So 7 minus 4 is going to be 3. 2 minus 1 is 1. Now if you come into a case like 3 minus 5, you're going to have to borrow. So borrow from the 9, make that become an 8. Change this to a 13. 13 minus 5 is going to be 8. And then 8 minus 3 is 5. So you get 5,813. If the Freilicks left Memphis and drove 356 miles on the first day of their vacation, and then they drove 426 miles on the second day, and the total trip is 1,050 miles, they want us to figure out how many more miles do they have to drive. So I would first add 356 and the 426, and that's going to be 782. And then take that 1,050 and subtract that 782. And this is going to tell us how many miles they have left. So if you do that, you should get 268, and let's label it with miles. Now with decimals, if they want us to take 7.18 from 15, I would start by trying to line these up, and I'm going to add a decimal point and 2 zeros to the 15. That way it matches that 7.18. And then we will subtract. Now with those double zeros, we're going to have to borrow twice. So you're going to have to go over to the 5, make that become a 4. So this first 0 becomes a 10, but I have to borrow from this 10, so make that become a 9, in order for that last 0 to become a 10. So 10 minus 8 is 2, 9 minus 1 is 8, bring down the decimal, and then again we have 14 minus 7, which would be 7. So 7.82. Tolerance is a certain amount of variation from a specific amount. So sometimes things will have a tolerance with like how long something needs to be, or like a weight limit. And a lot of times I use the symbol plus minus. So you've seen that probably in front of numbers when you're talking about positive and negative numbers. But this is also used when we're talking about tolerance. For example, if we're trying to find the limit dimensions on an object that's on a blueprint, and it has, a tolerance of plus or minus 0.005, and we've got this length of 8.097. You're going to take 8.097, you're going to add 0.005, and then you're going to subtract 0.005. So the tolerance here is going to be 8.102 inches to 8.092 inches. So that means that anything within that window of length should be fine for this project. For this one, they want us to estimate by rounding to hundreds, and then find the exact difference and check to see how close we were. So rounding this first number to hundreds, we've got 427, so I'm going to round that down to 400. Then I'm going to round down 125 to 100. So my rounding, or my estimate, is going to be 300. And then if I do the exact, that's going to be 302.45. Okay, for this next one, they would want you to use a calculator, so I would go ahead and subtract those, and when you do that, you're going to get $19,687.31. Two cuts are made from a 72-inch pipe, and the cuts are 28 inches and 15 inches. How much is left? So we're going to take 72, subtract 28, and subtract 15. 72 minus 28, if we do that first, leaves us with 44. And then we subtract 15. And so we're at 29 inches. Okay, moving into multiplying and dividing. So just like addition, we also have some of these properties that apply to multiplication. Notice that we haven't talked about any of those properties when it comes to subtraction or division, and that's because the order does matter for those type of operations. The commutative property for multiplication is it doesn't matter the order you multiply numbers in. You're going to get the same result. Associative is that grouping again. So if I take A times BC, if I'm grouping B and C together, I can regroup so that A and B are together, and then take it times C. The zero property of multiplication says that any number times 0 is 0. So to do some multiplying here, 3 times 2 times 9, you could simplify by doing 6 times 9 if you want to break it into smaller pieces, and you get 54. For this second one, since there's a 0 in there, your answer is just going to be 0 for that one. Now for these bigger numbers, I would stack them and then multiply. So you start with the 3 and you multiply to all of the digits above. So 3 times 4 is going to be 12, carry the 1. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1, and 3 times 2 is 6. Then you add on a row of 0. Then you take 0 times those 3 numbers, and that's just going to be 3 zeros. Now when I go to do the 1, I actually have to start by adding 2 zeros. And then 1 times 4 is 4, 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 2 is 2. Then we add these. So final answer for this one is going to be 21,012. So this is for number 3. I'm going to do number 4 right over here. So with the decimals, if it makes sense to you, start by just getting rid of all the decimal points, and we'll worry about those at the end. So we're going to take 6 times 2, which is 12. 2 times 3 would be 6, plus that 1 is 7. And 2 times 1 is going to be 2. Now, if you look at the problem, there's 2 numbers after this decimal and 1 number after this, which means there's a total of 3. So your decimal starts here, and you need to move it over 1, 2, 3. So the answer is going to be 0.272. For this one, it says that the outside diameter of a circular flower bed is 7.82 meters, and we have a brick wall that surrounds it that's 1.56 meters thick. They want us to find the inside diameter. So the outside diameter is at 7.82. Now the brick wall, if we think about what this looks like as a picture like this, we're trying to figure out how wide this is. We know that the entire way across is at 7.82. Now these areas in here are the brick. So each side is 1.56. So you have to take that away twice. So you're going to take like that 7.82 and subtract. I'm going to take 2 times 1.56 since there's 2 of them that I have to remove. And that's going to leave me with 4.70 meters. So that kind of brings up the distributive property, which is when you have a number or a letter, like a quantity on the outside of something in parentheses, like this. And you've probably seen in the past, like you'll draw arrows, and so you're just multiplying that outside quantity to the quantities on the inside. So it looks like this at the end. We can do that kind of idea when we're talking about finding like perimeter of something. So we're going to take P for perimeter of a rectangle, and we're going to take 2 times the length plus the width. So this one we would plug in those 2 dimensions that they give us for the length and the width. And you could distribute the 2 into each side and then add them. And when you do that, you're going to get 5,263.8 feet. For this next one, it wants us to find the estimate and the exact cost for this problem. So to start with the estimate, I'm going to round 48 up to 50. I'm going to round my cost down to $2. So I'm estimating this to cost me about $100. And then the exact, if I take 48 times the $2.15, that's going to be $103.20. So my estimate was really close to my actual amount. For this next one, we're talking about area and spraying fertilizer on this entire lawn. So the first thing we want to do is find area of the lawn. So we're going to take 223.4 times that 132.8, because area of a rectangle is length times width. So this ends up being 29,667.52 feet squared. And then since it costs this much per square foot, we're going to take that number times that amount to get our total cost of $118.67. For this one, because we have numbers that have a lot of zeros, we can actually drop those at first and just do 26 times 7. And that's going to be 182. And since I had those 3 zeros, I just attached them at the end of my problem here to get my exact answer. So division is the inverse operation of multiplication, but it is not commutative or associative. It matters the order that we divide things. So I'm first going to take 881 and divide by 35. And if we do this the long way, 35 goes in the 88 2 times. And then we subtract. We have 181. That can go in there 5 times, and that gets us up to 175. So we have a remainder of 6 for this problem. So to write that, we're going to do 25 R6 for the remainder. For this one, again, I would just divide in order. So 16 divided by 4 is 4, divided by 2 is 2.